Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I wish a quick call out. If you have questions as we go through all of our everything today, please drop it in the Q&A and we'll answer it at the end of the webinar. My name is Danny Josephson. I'm a sales manager here at Myagi by Rallyware, and I'm thrilled to be joined by our featured guest, Bill Howe, who leads in-store experience and activation at Gibson, one of the most iconic names in music today. Bill's role sits right at the intersection of brand training and sales enablement. He's responsible for how Gibson shows up at retail, not just visually, but in how frontline staff are educated, engaged, and equipped to bring the brand to life in conversations with customers. He's played a key role in shifting Gibson's retail strategy, moving from traditional in-person rep visits to a more scalable, always-on training approach that keeps product knowledge and passion alive across their global footprint. He's built programs that don't just inform, but they inspire advocacy. And today we're going to unpack what that transformation looks like, what he's learned along the way, and how it's driving results for Gibson. Bill, before we jump in, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and how it's evolved over the past couple of years?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Danny. Thank you for having me. Yeah, this is a great opportunity to share some of the wonderful work that we've been doing to create brand advocacy here at Gibson. So my role, I'm the manager of the dealer product specialist team for Gibson. So that is a national team. So we're across the country, the United States. And our role is at its core to really drive sell-through by partnering with our key retailers and drive training with their sales associates, or shop pros as we call them, as well as be kind of a face of the company for consumers that are present when we are conducting store visits, as well as retail events. So our role is very multifaceted, and it's definitely a team effort, that we work together very well to create, just as our team, but also with the broader Gibson team to create training curriculum for new products, but also to be able to successfully onboard, new sales associates, new shop pros at retail. And that's across, all of our key retailers, so larger e-tailers, as well as in-store brick and mortar. We're a team of only 6 people, so, our reach, just the 6 of us getting into stores, we can only cover so much ground in any given year. So we have, it's important for us to rely on technology such as Myagi to help continue that training and be that presence for salespeople when we are not physically in store. So, our role, and it doesn't just cover, like I said, brick and mortar, but also we do online training sessions with our large scale call centers as well. So we are attempting to show up as much as possible to really spread the gospel of Gibson and really create brand advocates at all of our retailers.
I love that. And since we're talking about your small and mighty team who's conquering big feats, we have one of your team members joining us today, Brandon, who's a dealer product specialist in the Southeast. So Brandon, maybe do you want to give us some context around how you're specifically involved in this strategy?
Sure. I am actually also, in addition to being in store, like Bill was talking about, I also do most of the back end for the Myagi platform for us. So I write the scripts for the videos, I write the quizzes, I prepare the additional one sheet just so we can have as much material on the platform in as multimedia a fashion as possible.
Love that. Thank you. Welcome. We're excited to have you here today. And I think that's a perfect setup for where I want to begin the conversation, because when I think of Gibson, the brand recognition is so high. You're one of the most iconic brands in music, and even for someone who doesn't play an instrument, they've probably seen on stage or their favorite artist or their favorite band representing or slaying Gibson on stage. But in 2025, that legacy alone isn't enough. And so, Bill, how are you making sure Gibson shows up powerfully on the shop floor today?
Sure. Well, yeah, definitely to your point, Gibson is one of the leading iconic brands in music. I like to liken us to, even if you don't know about much of anything about guitar, you've probably heard of Gibson before. Similar to, if you don't ride motorcycles, you've probably heard of Harley Davidson.
Right.
Similar things like that. We've been around for 130 years. There are many innovations across the history of Gibson that have been adopted by basically every guitar manufacturer. So there are a lot of key elements to our brand that now exist ubiquitously. And that's something that, we continue to innovate as much as we can. To be honest, we probably know this. The guitar has not really evolved a whole lot in the last, I would say really 50, 60 years since the electric guitar became what it is. But, we have a legacy to defend. We have we have our diehard fans who are the traditionalist fans, but, we know that music has changed over these last decades. There are some changes, some brands out there that do position themselves and perhaps as being a little bit more innovative. However, Gibson still continues to innovate to this day. And so it is important for us to, really acknowledge and be steeped in our history, but also tell the story of where we are going, and what we are continuing to bring to the table, why we are still a leader. So that's a really big portion of our challenge and our job these days is to explain that while, yes, we are this legacy brand, we are continuing to innovate, we are continuing to lead, and be that relevant, most played brand that we are today.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, part of that is showing up consistently with those frontline staff who are having those conversations with customers and representing you on the store floor. You've put a lot of emphasis on this retail associate advocacy. So why is that, and why was that when you first started looking at changing your strategy? Why was that such a priority for your team?
Well, we certainly, when you walk into most music stores, you will find the Gibson guy. There's somebody there, or gal, somebody there who has been playing Gibson their whole life who will evangelize our product. However, those people are sometimes starting to age out. Depending on the retailer. You have plenty of younger musicians who are just starting out today. So my team, our role is to really continue to tell that story to the next generation of musician, of shop pro. The guitar business, being a musician, playing an instrument is a very personal experience.
Right.
And that's really what drives people to find their favorite instrument. And we want it to be Gibson. It's been Gibson for decades, and we want to continue it to be that way. So being in store, talking about our products and creating that next generation of evangelists, of diehard Gibson fan is critical to continuing our success. Like I kind of said before, a lot of musical instruments have similar features, so we have to be able to drive that story of why Gibson is special, what makes Gibson special, and have that passion in those retailers as well. So that's a big challenge of what we face, and and that story becomes more and more important, as the years go by. So in 2025, we need to lean in on our history, like I said, but also continue to tell the story of why we're innovating and why we still deserve to be number one on the podium there.
Yeah, that's such a strong point. And, advocacy, as we've talked about, isn't just a nice to have. It's kind of tied to performance and sell through in those channels. So when associates are excited and can confidently speak to the story, not only the story, but also the Gibson products, what kind of impact do you see that having on sell through? And why do you feel that support is so critical for success now and as we look towards the future?
Sure. Well, staying top of mind is critical. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of saturation out there. And so, we need to have the tools at our disposal to be able to remain top of mind. People do not necessarily have the attention span to keep us top of mind if we're not continuing to be a presence.
Right.
And that's a big part of how we leverage Myagi when we're in the stores, when we are doing our trainings. It's an important piece for us. Like I said, a team of 6. How do you cover hundreds of retailers across the country? And really by leveraging that platform and our technology, that's a great way for us to stay top of mind. We can say, here's this great training presentation that we've just given you, and now, to continue to deepen your knowledge, here's the Myagi platform. You can go on there. You can take our product videos. We have numerous other, even more historic-based videos that live on there as well. But really being able to have that, basically have one of us, because we're the ones who are producing this content. You see one of our product specialists on these videos when we're posting them to Myagi. And we are a company that releases new products every month. So every month there's an opportunity for us to put something new on the platform and then connect with our network. So that's a very important. It's a great way for us to remain top of mind with our shop pros.
Yeah, I love that. And it all comes back to consistency again, right? Like the best way is to get in store, but with such a lean and mean, team that how often are you getting in there? So having a digital strategy to flank that and amplify and be more consistent and present with those store associates, to your point. And creating that kind of advocacy doesn't happen in isolation. It requires like tight collaboration with your retail partners. And I think a lot of our audience members today would be interested in that. So how have you seen brand retailer collaboration evolve over the years, and why do you think that is so important?
Sure. Well, I think that, like I was saying, consistency and remaining in constant contact is critical. There are so many more ways, as we know, to buy pretty much any product now, including guitars. As online sales become more common. But, like going back to what I was saying before about buying an instrument being a very personal experience, most people still to this day, they want to sit down, they want to be able to try an instrument before they buy it, or at least they want to be able to speak to an expert.
Right.
And it's critical that our retail partners are equipped with the knowledge to be able to sell our products effectively and really keep us in that conversation. So that's a big piece of it for us. We and Brandon, certainly feel free to chime in here if you have other feedback that you want to give on this question. But it is evolving more and more where not only do we need to reach that brick and mortar retail, but we need to reach that call center. And again, we don't, as that small team, we don't have the opportunity to be everywhere all at once. So, being able to have a platform where we have our library of knowledge and be able to share that passion with shop pros at every level is critical. And I only see that becoming more and more necessary. Certainly as the online retailers get stronger, but also to be able to share that with the brick and mortar as well.
And I'm sure maybe you can speak just to the sentiment from those retail partners about, the strategy that you've put in place today, and are they happy with it, or are they asking for it when you're onboarding new? Like, is training and enablement something that comes up in a conversation when you're onboarding new retailers?
Yes, certainly. That is, that it's so critical because there are so many nuances with these products, and having someone who can articulately can tell our story, not just the history, but explain the products and why they are what they are today and where that came from, is so important. We also, we see at our retailers, it's a fast-paced environment when you're on a sales floor. It's a fast-paced environment when you're talking to a customer on the phone or online as well. and there's only a limited amount of time that a shop pro is going to have to necessarily learn about product, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big lesson that we learned, that we've learned over the years of incorporating Myagi. Initially, we were pulling some pretty long form, 5, 10, possibly even longer minute videos from just kind of our lifestyle content to attempt to teach that to shop pros. And we really found out that was not the right formula. It was great information. It was really important. Those who had the time to sit down and digest it, they really appreciated it. But the fact of the matter is that shop pros have only a couple of minutes at a time to really learn and absorb product information. So, we're happy that we've been able to leverage Myagi to create these brief 2-minute or less product videos to share with them, so that way shop pros can very quickly get the information that they need. And Brandon, I see you popped up, so you probably want to say something to that as the curriculum developer.
Yeah, it was just when our team really took ownership of the platform and development of the videos that I think we really started to see great success. That's when we were able to leverage, the decades of experience that the 6 of us have in both the music industry and with Gibson, and turn it into what we wanted it to be. And I think the fact that we're on the ground level and we've all worked at the retail side and can really look at what retail associates need and say 2-minute videos, and even that sometimes is pushing it. That's what we got to aim for.
Yeah, I love that. It's about meeting them where they are and giving them the opportunity to engage with the time constraints that maybe they have. And also maybe when we look at social media these days and how that's kind of put us into the micro content bucket, I'm sure that plays into, why completion rates and engagement are higher with those shorter form kind of videos. I think that's a good segue to kind of my next question. Like, building that kind of relationship and engagement at scale isn't without its challenges, right? Like, you guys have iterated and continually taken the data and learnings and evolved your strategy in terms of enablement over the years. So I'm sure some folks are wondering, how can we get some best practices here? Like, what were some of the biggest hurdles you ran into, like, after changing that strategy, and how did you kind of overcome them?
Well, yeah, I mean, the biggest hurdle really was, how do you create digestible content in a short period of time?
Yeah.
It's something that's just taken a fair amount of refinement. It's definitely a group effort between the 2 of us here, as well as Jeff Sprayberry, who's the man on camera for most of the videos that we create. He does a fantastic job. I hope you get to see them someday. But it really is, we listened to feedback from our retailers about, what worked, what didn't. At first it was a really wide, we blasted this out to everybody that we possibly could and tried to get as much feedback as possible. We still do that, and that's one of the best practices, I would say. I think twice a year we put out a satisfaction survey. So we are constantly listening to what our retail partners are asking for, and trying to find new and creative ways to leverage it. Not just to, it's a great resource, but how do we also get our partners are really excited about using the platform, and how can we even further aid with sell-through. And one specific example, last year we did have a sales contest with one of our larger ETL partners to really help them focus on maybe some SKUs of ours that weren't moving as quickly as they wanted to, but also to really help drive engagement and just broader training. So we were able to create specific content for them, and really combine the sales contest with leveraging the Myagi platform. So those shop pros, they had to be taking our training modules in order to qualify to win the prizes that we offered them, which worked out very well. And it also, we were focusing on driving sales of specific models. So basically, you take a 2-minute video on a specific product that we know that they're over indexed in. put that out to the shop pros. They take that module, they help drive the sales, and we saw a pretty big lift. That retailer saw a pretty big lift on that product. It was about $200,000 of additional sell-through.
Oh, wow.
Just of that product that was struggling. So it really did help, by combining the contest and the training, it really helped move the needle there. So
yeah,
right at that.
I love that. And Brandon, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I think Bill covered it.
Cool. I think you touched on this a little bit already, but I wanted to shift more towards behavior and kind of like that initial strategy. It's one thing to implement and launch training, which you've already said, it's just kind of throw it out there, but it's another thing to build ongoing engagement. And, I'm sure there's some folks out there wondering, how did you approach getting associates excited to engage with the new strategy out of the gates in those early days, and what's working best now to keep that momentum going? You mentioned, running a spiff or an incentive program for some SKUs that were maybe not moving as quickly, which I think is a great example, but is there anything else that comes to mind on that front?
I would say just contact, continuing to be able to, one, create content and push it out. And Brandon, you can also speak to this probably too, but, to be able to smoothly announce that, we are fortunate in the fact that we are able to pretty frequently launch new products. So we are always refreshing the platform, there's always and we always see a big lift as far as engagement anytime new videos drop on the platform. So, again, that kind of speaks to before, keeping us top of mind. The more we're able to push out new content, the more we're able to, just really keep people engaged by just creating awareness that, hey, we're still here and here's some more new cool stuff from Gibson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to the consistency again, right? Where it's not a one touch point and then you're creating that advocacy. It's multiple touch points, new videos, new in-store clinics, and that strategy working together on the total advocacy strategy side.
Yeah. And I will say that since we have such a historical legacy and such a lifestyle brand associated with us, it's pretty easy to get people to do what you want them to do, even if you just throw a baseball cap at them.
Yeah, a little bit of swag goes a long way.
About Gibson. But then they've got something tangible also, and it's not just that, but it's, the next customer that comes in and says, oh, nice hat. They're like, oh, right. I just learned about some Gibson stuff. Let me tell you.
Go here. Yeah, exactly. I love that. So all that's great context. I think that's super helpful for our folks tuning in. If a colleague or a brand, came to you today and was focused on driving sell-through at retail, what advice would you give them based on what you've learned throughout these last couple of years in changing your entire, strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's not just about being able to recite specs, having a good brand story and being able to tell that.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky that we have the 130 plus years of history that Gibson has, and we can lean back on that legacy when we need to. But it is more than just that. It is about really igniting that passion and connecting that way. I mean, I think that crosses really any industry. And actually, one thing that I was going to mention before too is that the training modules and everything that we do, that's great, but that does just scratch the surface of a fair amount of the content that we use, that we've leveraged Myagi for, because we do, like I was saying, as a legacy brand, there's a fair amount of educational content that dives a lot deeper than just what's the hot new product for us. And that's sort of that critical, that critical double click that I would say that really is what that's really where you really start to generate those brand advocates. Because, for example, we have a video tour of our electric guitar factory in Nashville. And we've actually just put out a new series on our acoustic manufacturing in Montana as well. And, those are, you can watch the the 4 or 5 hour long episodes on our YouTube channel if you want to, and that's great
Right.
for consumers and people who have that. But what we have done is we've split those, taken those and chopped them down into smaller, more bite-sized chunks that walk you through the manufacturing process for Gibson. And that's a huge special piece of what makes Gibson. It's what, it's great to see that the techniques in construction that we were using initially we're still using today. And that's a big piece of that a lot of our consumers, our fans really want to see. And it's one that really share that the feedback that we get when we share those videos is, I had no idea that your manufacturing was still so steeped in this, in these original methods of construction. And that's really the magic of Gibson right there. And so, putting that on Myagi and turning that into a more digestible thing for shop pros has been pretty critical and special as well.
Yeah, and eventually passing that story along to the consumer is the ultimate goal, right? I love that. As we look further ahead, like retail, you mentioned, these e-commerce platforms, but also your brick and mortar, like it's evolving fast. And so are the expectations on both sides of the partnership. So from your perspective, what does the next generation of supplier retailer partnerships look like? And how do you see advocacy and visibility and consistency at the shelf playing into that as we look into the future?
Well, I think advocacy will always be critical. I do see, the necessity for, more collaboration. I feel like Gibson is doing a good job with our retail partners of trying to enhance that experience. We're now, we do some of our key retailers. They do visit our headquarters in Nashville and actually have started to create content themselves. So I could see, if we're kind of bringing it back to Myagi while we're here, I can see the future of retailers who have their own kind of separate channel in a platform like this, where even they've created, or there is content created specifically for them, be it an exclusive product that's an overview for them, or here's footage of associates from that retailer at Gibson, really demonstrating that partnership and, coming together and working together, and not just, at the corporate level, but also bringing in, retail associates to Gibson or to wherever in the future, if we're talking about, advice for others, just like if you can bring in a retail associate to experience what your brand does, then you've really created something really special there.
I love that. So you can sign me up for that. Anything to add there, Brandon? I love everything you just said there.
No, I think that's pretty well covers it. I guess the only thing I can think of is the biggest change I saw to what we did is really try to dial down with who's this product for, and try to reinforce that as part of the storytelling. So going beyond just the specs. Bill, feel free to tease me about this later, but we had to read a book for work last year called Weekend Language. And one of the tips in there was figure out, so what, who cares? And I think really trying to keep that front of mind when I'm creating the content, and whether it's the script or the one sheets, that's really what I'm trying to do, is peel back to who cares.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, I know we're up on time, so Brandon and Bill, this has been like so fantastic for me. Thank you for letting me be your host today. We've covered everything from how Gibson shows up at retail to building, solid advocacy strategy, to where you see partnerships heading in the future. And let's open it up to the audience now. I think we have a few, questions in there. So if you're all right with it, for the audience members, if you have a question, pop it into the Q&A and I'll take a gander here. Curious here, how do you actually know the brand training is moving sales and not just driving engagement clicks?
Well, I mean, certainly a lot of our retailers do share, their sell through with us. Um, Going back to that sales contest in particular, because we're giving away prizes, so we needed some tracking for that. Um, that's we do double click into that piece certainly. And yeah, in that case, we were looking at those specific targeted SKUs. So when we can do that, that's a pretty strong indicator that we're moving the needle, because again, if those were SKUs that were not performing well and suddenly they are after we're engaging on that, then we can see that for sure.
I love that. And I guess a follow-up question for me, you said some of the retailers provide you with kind of that sell-through data. Are you able to go match that up with engagement, like using the analytics in Myagi?
We certainly can. Yeah. We're able to do that. And I mean, and some of it is also anecdotal, again, since we are in those stores and we do have relationships with those dealers. I mean, it certainly happened to me, Brandon. I'm sure it's happened with you, where we walked into a store and somebody was like, I had no idea about, the way that Gibson sets the neck is done by hand at the store. I explained that to a customer and he bought the guitar. We do get real-time feedback. We're fortunate to be, we're really engaged as much as we can be on the individual level too. So that helps us, if we're the people, because we also do a fair amount of the physical signups. We do the presentations of why you should use the Myagi training platform. And then when we come back and follow up in, depending on the dealer, 1 month to 6 months, whatever it is, we usually hear a lot of those stories.
I love that.
Yeah.
Next question. How do you handle seasonal pushes like holiday spikes or new model launches differently from your usual evergreen training?
Well, I think I'm trying to let me think about a way to do that.
We don't really do much for holiday, just because we don't have a ton of product launching then, because we know that that's typically the busiest time of the year and there's not a lot of product training and it doesn't make sense to try to launch stuff. People are buying what is the easiest to sell.
Gotcha.
What's the easiest to buy?
Then the holidays, yeah.
That's really the buy for others. That's when we see a lot of like packs, starter level guitars. Little Johnny's getting his first guitar for Christmas. Little Janie's getting her first guitar, whatever it is. Those are usually kind of the more bare bones. What's in stock tends to sell.
Gotcha. And as far as the new model launches, I mean, like that is mostly what drives the newest content. So that is a pretty major focus for us. To Brandon's point, we do usually step back around starting in October through December for launches, so that way we're not distracting people from their holiday sales. But that is where the majority of the 2-minute product videos that we were talking about, where those come from. That is an introduction. That's a new product introduction. So that's a big focus, and that is what I think spikes and drives the engagement and keeps it moving. I hope that explains it well.
Awesome. We have quite a few more questions popping in, so I'm just going to give you more of a rapid fire.
All right.
What kind of format of content actually worked best for Gibson? By the way, I love how you call the associates diehard fans. Kudos on building that kind of energy.
Sure. So what are you saying? What was this? Can you read it one more time? Sorry.
It says, what sort of format of content actually worked best for Gibson?
So
we touched on it a little bit, that content, but
yeah. So it's it's a 2-minute. It's usually a single product video. Sometimes if there's a larger launch, we'll do a bigger one. But it's usually a single product video. It's about 2 minutes long. We run through the so what, who cares, as Brandon said. Go through the features and benefits and selling points, and then there's usually a quick demo of the instrument itself. So we have someone playing it so you can hear it which is great. You know, these instruments don't always make it to every store at the same time. So sometimes it's a shop pro's first opportunity to hear a demo of it, which is a very important thing. You know, I've heard this, it sounds great. That's really important, rather than, I don't know what this guitar is going to sound like. And then that's also followed up by a brief quiz, like we were saying, that Brandon puts together. So at the end of each of those videos, there's about a 5-question quiz. So it just helps reinforce what we presented in there. So that's been the main driver of our training, of our format.
Of that. This kind of ties into that. Do you collect any feedback from the floor? What are associates actually saying about Gibson training? We do.
Yeah. So certainly we're always asking that question when we're in store. We want to hear from our shop pros as much as we possibly can. And then we do that twice a year satisfaction survey, just to make sure that we are, putting out the right format for shop pros to consume and for them to retain.
Yeah, perfect. And then I guess there's also in those individual lessons, there's a spot for them to populate feedback as well in a free form sort of.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you do incentives? If so, how do you manage incentives with such high value products?
So our incentives have been actually more targeted and smaller. So, talking about that one contest that we did last year with one dealer, that was the biggest incentive program that we've really run thus far. Other than that, kind of aside from, when we're in store and we, like Brandon said, give a hat away for signing up, we are relying quite a bit just on the content that we're producing to drive the engagement. We are kind of fortunate that in this industry we have a lot of people who are just gear nerds, that want to be constantly learning about it. They're really passionate about it. Pretty much everyone, not everyone, but pretty much everyone's a musician. So, they're on a quest not just to be able to sell the product, but for their own education. They want to know, is this new Gibson the next guitar for me? So that helps quite a bit. But yeah, we really are just letting the content speak for itself and drive the engagement that we see.
Love that. Last question, I believe. How often do you feel you need to update the training content to keep it interesting and engaging? Is there a consistent routine that you have found that works for you?
So as far as the new product, and Brandon, also feel free to talk about this too, since you're kind of scheduling it out. We have our quarterly to biannual product launch calendars. So we're always scheduling new content around those launches. We try to be as consistent as possible with putting out the videos that we do, so that way they actually drop on the launch date. So, here's the brand new Warren Haynes signature Les Paul. Bam. It's on that launch date. So as soon as the shop pro unboxes the guitar, he or she can open up the Myagi app and watch the 2-minute video. So we try to, and then, like I said, we always see that spike. But I don't know, Brandon, do you want to speak a little bit to that?
That's pretty much what I was going to say. Is we try to keep it top of mind and relevant. Again, with the Gibson name attached to us, we have the luxury of driving awareness just every time we release something. And without giving much away, there's going to be a lot of our name in the news later this year. And we can leverage that pretty easily just to make sure that we're always front of mind, both for the consumer and the shop pro.
Love that. I think we've hit all the questions here. So I want to thank both Bill and Brandon. It was great, hearing your insights and your strategy. And of course, you've been such a great partner to Myagi over the years. So we thank you for that. But I want to send everybody off and wish you a great day. But thanks again, you guys, and we'll plan on catching up soon.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Danny. This was a pleasure. Happy to do it.
Maybe we'll do another one.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more news to come, or contact us at info.rallyware.com.